Hey, it's Drybear. We're finishing up with our last witch leveling build. We had already gone over fire minions, the combination of arsonists with fire or flame wall, all of that put together. But there's another great synergy inside of the witch kit that you can get online instantly, very quickly in the early parts of normal mode and carry you through normal mode all the way to end game through cruel if you'd like to, and that is going to be cold-based minions using the frost mages. So again, we kind of reiterate some things from the fire minion thing. We know that you can't really get any damage from yourself that applies directly to your minions. You can't get elemental damage or cold damage and that'll apply to your minions. They're insulated from all of that. So you have to build both minions and bonus damage for yourself overall. But I didn't want to leave just one minion build on the table, and I think there's actually a lot of different ways you could run minions all throughout the campaign and through cruel if you wanted to. This is just so much synergy with cold, freeze, buildup, and the frost mages that gives you a whole bunch of very easily scalable damage. So for this one, we're going to be running with a energy shield aura on our scepter, a stoic scepter, instead of skeletal warriors. We're going to be using a little bit of spell damage ourselves, casting frost bolts, frost bombs, and of course using cold snap to detonate freeze. But in combination with freezing enemies ourselves and having a lot of frost mages at our backs, you can very easily just clear entire rooms by shattering them, freezing them, combining them together. And what's cool is you damage you get from the frost bomb, like the frost bomb that is the active command skill from the frost mages, is ridiculous. It scales incredibly well, super high damage, and it has very high frost buildup as well. So you can see here in this footage, I'm just casting the frost bomb from the frost mages. It freezes instantly on impact. While we're running glaciation, you can instantly shatter the enemies, and it also does incredible single target damage as well. And one of the cool added benefits of this build is that because you have so much chill and freeze buildup, your minions are a lot safer, and you are too. And so even though we don't have a lot of cannon fodder in front with the unearthed minions or the raging spirits or skeletal warriors or zombies, we don't really need it as much. In fact, even then, it does feel like the minions are way safer in this case, except for like large AoEs or boss fights where they can kind of get blown away by certain things. But you have so much control over space. You're freezing constantly, shattering constantly. And what's cool about this is there are a lot of end game builds that use uniques that can make freeze status extend to other targets, shatter status trigger on other targets, and you can pro this into an endgame build if you really wanted to, if you wanted to push it further with what's available right now in the game. Now, unlike the fire minion build, this one is definitely a lot more hungry on mana as well as cast speed. There's a lot of things you want to do. The faster you can cast, the more you can kill, because you will cast the frost bomb command skill from your frost mages, everything will freeze, and then you will want to cast the cold snap animation to shatter it. You also want frost bolts flying through the air and freezing people. You want to be able to put frost bombs and hypothermias on the ground. And so really you're going to be mostly limited by your mana and your cast speed, being able to chew through targets overall. And that's what you're going to want to work on as you move towards like the middle of cruel, towards the end of cruel, is just making sure that you keep up with your damage output, your scaling, your minions stay alive and are reliable enough to push through. And you can just keep spamming on single target or AoE, and everything should have very excellent damage scaling from there. Of course, I have the one sheet for you if you want to just have a reference sheet for everything inside of this. We'll talk about all this in a minute, just going through the individual details. But if you wanted everything on one sheet that you could use to reference for the build overall, we have this listed. I'll have this link down below in the description and in the comments, along with the full build up on Mobalytics if you're looking for something that's easier for you to read if you prefer to have that. So I have all the skills, abilities, modifiers, and the skill tree plus the Ascendancy, and then the most important stats like getting Spirit, the Stoic Scepter, and of course a Mana Drain Wand, which will help you, Spirit on the Amulet, and things like that. And this becomes even more important if you decide to go for the Necromancer's Talisman, where you can actually give your minions specific stats from your amulet, which could be cast speed, which would benefit the Frost Mages quite a lot if you decide to use that. But I'll leave this link down below if you want to use it. Now let's go over the build explanation, all the moving parts so you know what to look for and how things work. I have to reiterate what we talked about in the Fire Minion build video, and that is the unfortunate downside with the revive system in Path of Exile 2 early access as it stands right now. I sincerely hope this is something that they look at and change sooner rather than later, because it's quite abhorrent and kind of sad that this is how it is implemented in the game right now. So if you didn't know, there are different kinds of minions that you can get. Temporary minions that have a duration, like zombies, unearthed minions that are just temporary. They'll be up for duration and they'll go down. However, to prevent you from having to cast Raise Skeleton over and over like you do in other RPGs that play with the minion mechanic, they have an auto revive feature in Path of Exile 2, which means that if you go to a minion, it'll tell you whether it's a temporary minion or a reviving minion. Reviving minions have a built-in mechanic inside of them so that when they die after a timer, they will automatically return back to life and start following you again, which gives you a really great option for keeping your minions alive. However, there's one major flaw with this mechanic that I think desperately needs to change, and that is when you lose a minion. So if I kill a minion here with a pain offering, you'll notice that it starts the reforming minions timer. This is a persistent timer that starts as soon as one reviving minion at least has been killed, and it starts refreshing, it starts running that timer. However, if you end up killing another minion, it will restart the timer without respawning anything. So if you have a staggered death rate on your skeletal minions or reviving minions, you could lose a minion just before the timer ends, lose another one, it will reset the timer. Just before that timer ends, you could lose another one, reset the timer, and you can have long stretches of time where the revives don't happen because you're constantly resetting that timer. I hope this is an easy fix and they understand how bad this is, but in order to combat that, if you're going to be leveling with minions on a witch, I think it's paramount that you end up running with the revive faster mechanic. There are 5 nodes that you can get for this. Minions revive faster from living death. You can get another 25% up here. Gravedigger, minion revive speed gives you another 25%. And then if we cut over here, you can get another 25% as well. So this does 2 things. One, it takes that 8-second timer down to like a 5 or 4-second timer, which is way better, which means that if your minions die, they get back into the action much faster, which is very important for this build where we're not running with a lot of minions, but we have a few minions that are very strong that we want to keep alive as best as we can. So that revive timer is great. The second thing is combating the unfortunate implementation of the system, which means that if you have a shorter timer, you're less likely to run into the unfortunate timer reset situation, because realistically, it's not 5 seconds for a reviving minion to come back in. You actually realistically need to have 5 seconds where any reviving minions don't die. You need a period of time, a stretch of time where no reviving minions die that don't reset the timer so you can get your minions back. In some situations, you might lose all your minions and then you'll have to wait that full timer and get them back. But lowering that timer makes the leveling experience for this way better for these, which is super crucial and super important. The other thing that you'll see from this that you just saw right here, the unfortunate downside with running with cold and freeze is that when a frozen enemy dies and shatters, they don't leave a corpse. Which means we're not going to be running with Unearth, we're not going to be running with Raise Zombie, we're not going to be doing corpse explosions. Basically, we're going to be freezing so much that we're not going to be generating very many corpses, and so we're not going to rely on corpses at all, but it's perfectly fine because the Frost Mages are absolutely insane in the damage they put out. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the functionalities of the build. The most of your damage is going to come from your Frost Mages. They actually chunk super hard, they do frost buildup, they shatter, they have explosions. So once you have Frost Mages online, which you'll have to get a couple levels into your fresh made character to unlock the Frost Mages. At low levels, you can just run with very basic like Frost Bomb or just very basic frost spells, or you can even just take whatever wand you have and use the auto attack in order to just clear things until you unlock them. Once you have them, they will do exploding icicles that deal damage on impact and then also again when they explode, which is super useful. And then they also have this Command Ice Bomb. You will have a Command Ice Bomb charge for each of your 5 minions. They have individual cooldowns. So since I have 5 minions here, if you have more or less, depending on how much spirit you have, you can cause them to command separately. So I can press this button, they'll just shoot the frost. You'll see they'll do it one by one, and I have 5 charges, but by the time I get to the last one, this first guy here is back, then this guy's back, then the next guy's back, and as soon as you have enough of them, you can just cycle this over and over, doing ridiculous damage from the Frost Bomb overall. So your goal is to protect these guys the best you can and let them frost bomb. It's also why we're going to run with a Stoic Scepter, because this gives us discipline. This gives us a energy shield to ourselves, but nearby allies as well. We don't need the Skeletal Warriors. We're not going to scale with them anyways. So we're just going to run with energy shield and we stand near our minions, because as long as these Frost Mages are up, anything in our way is just going to die because of that. However, on top of that, you have a couple of sweet options to roll with. You can roll with Frost Bolt. This is a projectile that you shoot that will leave frost ground on the ground, gives you a little bit more chill buildup, more freeze buildup, which is super useful. It does decent damage as well. It's not crazy, but it gives us decent damage to spread from that on top of everything else. And we're also going to run with Cold Snap, which you'll get relatively early on in like towards the end of Act 1, basically. And what this does is that if an enemy is frozen in place, you can then actually use Cold Snap to shatter them, dealing damage to them directly. So if they get frozen, you can shatter them. If they shatter, they'll explode in AoE. If it's a single target and it's not enough to kill them, it'll remove their freeze status, but do a boatload. You can see how much cold damage this is doing right now. Just by itself, it's actually ridiculous how much damage it does. And then the explosion radius is there as well. So you get some really good value out of that on top of it. Then, to give you more AoE and more sustain, I recommend running Frost Bomb. I tried Frost Nova. I tried the Frost Jump Back for Monk. Just try it. None of it was really necessary. Frost Bomb is all you really need because not only does it have cold damage and freeze and chill buildup, but it also has an exposure that reduces their resistance to, or increases the cold damage that they receive, which is super useful. So all you have to do is pop down the Frost Bomb. It'll tick and explode. And when it explodes, it does a good amount of damage and gives exposure as well. For the Frost Bomb, we're also going to run with magnified effects. We get bigger area. So you just put this down, and then you can start dropping bombs on top of it, freezing everywhere, freezing everywhere, freezing everywhere. Once you finally unlock the hypothermia later on, it will be a way for you to lower the resistance on single targets. So you want to hypothermia Frost Bomb them. Make sure that you have like maybe one set of the Frost Bolts flying through the air, and then you can just dunk, 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 dunk. You might find that as you push towards the end of like normal mode, that you need a little bit more damage, and we're going to use Pain Offering for that. You do want a decently high level of Pain Offering so that sacrificing one of your Frost Mages is worth it for the buff you get. And for that, I would still run Persistence to give it more duration, so that right now the offering is 8.4 seconds. Without this, it's 6 seconds. Not super worth it, but it is something to keep in mind. And I do like running Font of Blood or Font of Mana on this just to get a little bit extra. So if you find the opportunity, you have your Hypothermia on, you have your Frostbound down, everything's ticking, you can sacrifice one Frost Mage, make the rest of them super strong, you'll get your recovery from it as well, which is nice, and then this will come down. It does have a staggered respawn on this, but sometimes it can be worth it if you have a high enough level of the Pain Offering to get built up on there. I wouldn't run anything but Pain Offering, to be honest with you. You don't need the spell damage from the higher level offering. You don't need the absorb from the mid-level offering. I think Pain Offering is enough by itself. The only exception for that is if you come up here and you pick up this node, which gives you 40% minion damage when you have two different offerings. I would just run maybe like the damage offering, the Pain Offering, which gives you attack speed. It gives you a whole bunch of stuff. It gives you attack and cast speed and more damage. Cast speed is very useful for these minions to help them get through. And then you can also run the absorb offering as well, just to make sure you have that bone offering, I think it's called, that gives you that absorb. And that's pretty much it. From there, your goal is just to move from pack to pack. As you're approaching a pack, I would drop the Frost Bomb. Then you can start dropping the Frost Mages. They'll be attacking as well. If you see someone freeze, cast a Cold Snap on them to shatter them. Throw out the Frost Bolt just to kind of get things moving as you get that on. And if you find a single target, you'll want to Frost Bomb with Hypothermia to make sure that they have the resistance and exposure, and then just start dumping this. Once you have enough Frost Mages, you should be able to just cycle your Ice Bombs from them over and over by working in other spells in between, and just cycling that and getting lots of damage on them. They'll freeze, they'll take a bunch of damage, and they'll burn down. Additionally, any amount of mana returned on kill that you can get is great. Getting a tuned wand for mana drain is useful. It means you can just like use your basic attack to drain mana from the target and keep everything going, but you're basically just the commander, the Frozen Legion commander that's keeping your Frost Mages alive and just dumping their bombs from above to destroy everything in your path. When it comes to talent tree, you have two choices to make here. If you want to go for the slow and steady route, you can come up here with the energy shield and pick up these nodes here with the faster revive. If you're confident in your spell casting abilities and you want to use elemental spells like Frostbolt early on, Frost Bomb early on, just to burn through, you can take the left route, which is going to give you more minion damage, more spell damage, and it's also going to give you increased attack and cast speed for your minions, which is super crucial. This is definitely higher damage, but your minions are going to be kind of squishy. Like you can grab this one here, go to the minion health and go up this way, but they will be squishy and you'll miss out on this revive faster. So what you could do is go up to this damage sign on casting, come down, grab the revive faster, then cut straight up here to Gravedigger and get these nodes, get the minion damage nodes, all of those. And then I would come over here and get the revive faster here. Finish this circle, and then you can also grab the increased damage if you're casting a lot to get that going, or you can just come up here like through this side and go straight up to this, grab the jewel for extra minion damage, and then get the minion reduction in reservation, which is awesome. Finish off grabbing the resistances and HP for your minions, more crit damage, crit chance plus damage for your minions. You can even get the life per second for your minions, and then go into like the offerings, like this group here and this group here can make your offerings way stronger, which makes it more worthwhile as you add more characters in. Keep in mind that when you do things like frost damage, it's only going to be for you. So like cold damage here, if you do cold damage, it's only going to be for you, not for your minions. So you want to be kind of careful about how you split up your resources. If you wanted to, you could do 50% spell damage, cold damage, 50% minion damage, but I would reckon that if you're going to go for a minion build, you probably want to start decking your minions out early with as much survivability and damage as you can, and enough support to keep them alive. Then, as I mentioned, you can run Necromantic Talisman as a keystone. This allows you to give stats from your amulet to your minions. Things like cast speed, spell damage, things like that would work for them because it's giving it to them, not you. However, if you have spirit on it, I haven't tested this to know if you lose the spirit that's on your amulet. You probably do. So just keep that in mind when you grab this, but it otherwise is a way to give minions stats that they normally wouldn't have access to. Life regeneration, maximum life, energy shield, spell casting speed, spell damage, all of that should apply once you use this talisman to apply it to them directly. When it comes to Ascendancy, you have limited choices, but I still think Infernalist is the best option here. You could go for spell crit from the Blood Mage tree just to add to everything else, but it's gonna affect you, not your minions. And I think that there are better options in here in the Infernalist tree. So what I recommend doing is either trying to rush down here to Bedat's Will. So you'd come here, you get maximum life, a nice survivability bonus. This takes cold damage and lightning damage, turns into fire damage, which means your fire resistance is now more valuable. And then it turns physical damage into chaos damage, which means instead of needing armor, you can just get chaos resistance to mitigate some of that damage. This is a super awesome defensive node. Get maximum life and then come down here and then convert maximum life into more spirit to get more frost mages. Or you could grab the loyal Hellhound right away. He will apply Ignite, but he's a super nice tank. If you grab him and you put on him Meat Shield as well as Elemental Army, that means he has high resistance and he also has, he gets more maximum life. Makes him super tanky, easy to deal with. You can actually scale him up like a crazy, like he's out of 2100 life for me right now. Very tanky minion, and he'll auto revive as well, which is nice. And he helps keep the mages alive, but I think this is going to give you more damage in the long run. And then for the fourth Ascendancy, you could probably just get maximum life or spell damage depending on what you're building for. But as you start pushing into level 70, you're not really using a leveling build anymore at that point anyways. And that's the build. I was kind of shocked, or I guess I was very frozen, shattered, chilled over how strong this build actually was. I was thinking that, you could do poison minions with snipers and poison damage from a ranger side of the tree or a merc side of the tree. You could do fire minions, which we already covered. You could do physical bone minions with debuffs from Bone Storm if you wanted, plus melee minions from the resurrections or explosions. But the frost minions was one that I wanted to work on, and it ended up being incredibly strong, but also very safe because you have so much CC. I was worried that it wouldn't be good enough on bosses just because of the freeze buildup, but it actually ends up being perfectly fine. And as long as you invest enough in the frost minions and keeping them alive, you can actually do tons of damage very safely with a full theme that'll take you all the way through Cruel. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.